Welcome everybody to the Wake Up Call channel. Families in the UK are being urged to stockpile at least 3 days worth of food and water. But don't be suspicious at all as to why the government's warning you or what the government knows that they're not telling you, because what they really know that they're not telling you is that they plan on being the ones who cause you to need at least 3 days worth of food and water. But I can guarantee you it'll be a lot longer than that, because what you're seeing around the world right now are governments sabotaging their civilians. The governments have gone rogue against their civilians to bring in this new world order. In some ways, this is them believing that their good deeds outweigh their bad deeds by giving you a little bit of a heads up beforehand and telling you, hey, you're going to need food and water. All these crazy people who you guys call crazy conspiracy preppers have been talking about it for years. Well, yeah, don't worry about them. We're just going to tell you that you probably should have a few things ready to go in the event that a bunch of different simulations occur. And I use the word simulation because these are all government simulated events. So Britons should have 3 days worth of tinned food and water. And they've even prepared a government website, prepare.campaign.gov.uk, where they're telling you how to prep. I think it's just pretty incredible that all of us have been warning about these things for a while. We warned before the outbreak occurred, the simulated outbreak that they told you about beforehand. We warned years in advance. It happened. Nobody really woke up. A small portion of people did wake up, which was good, but the majority of people still remained asleep and still were saying that we were all conspiracy nuts, even though we were proven right time and time again. Now we have the government coming out and telling you, if an emergency happens in your area, this is how you need to manage it. So wink, wink, have emergency supplies on hand. And then when we tell you what actually occurred, just believe whatever narrative we can, because we prepared you for it. Remember, we told you to get food and water for a couple of days, and then when it happens, don't blame it on us, because we told you to get food and water, so why would we be the ones who are attacking our own citizens? That doesn't make any sense, right? We only are telling you that there could be a potential boogeyman attack, which in essence is really us attacking you, but we want you to believe that it's another country and a cybersecurity guy sitting in his mom's basement somewhere. So wind-up torches, tinned meat, and bottles of water are just some of the items the government is advising people to stock up on as it urges the public to prepare for emergencies. Deputy Prime Minister Olivier Dowden has revealed a new website to advise people on how to protect themselves from various risks, including biosecurity crisis, flooding, power outages, or another pandemic. Of course, when it comes to the biosecurity crisis, they want you to think that the motive for other countries, it's not the governments in other countries, it's just some rogue guys wearing anonymous masks in their basement who want to turn off the power grid in America because they have nothing better to do, right? They just want to shut it off. There couldn't be anything that, our own government could gain from shutting off our power grid. The same people that tell us that we need to go green want us to go green because they want a controllable power grid where they can make us live as slaves. So what's the best way to do that? Well, destroy the power grid and then force us into it, because they see that people are not complying and buying these electric vehicles, especially when people notice that they don't start in the winter when it gets a little too cold. The entire thing fries because the entire thing is a battery. And naturally, batteries go dead in the winters. You got to keep running them. And if they do go dead, the car goes dead for good. You pretty much need an entire new car. You can't really replace just the battery inside of one of these Tesla EV vehicles. You have to replace the whole vehicle. So be forewarned that the government foresees a biosecurity crisis. They see flooding, which again is them creating it using weaponized weather. Just ask Dubai. Or you could ask, other weaponized weather events like direct energy weapon hits in places like Lahaina and Chile. Or you could just look at what they're doing in Iowa right now with these tornadoes that they're creating using HARP, or power outages, right? Because we're supposed to believe the power outage, when that happens, is a solar flare while they're doing all this stuff to manipulate the skies around us, right? So the Prepare website calls on households to stock up on bottled water with a minimum supply of 3 liters of drinking water per person per day, but says 10 liters is recommended for more comfortable levels for cooking and hygiene. And they've been preparing you for this for a while, but just remember, I've been trying to prepare people so that they can survive what's about to come, and you're going to need a lot more than 3 days worth of food and water. But whatever excuse comes in, Whatever they decide to use, whatever area you're located, because it's going to be different in different parts. The entire grid isn't going to go down for the entire Earth all at once. Likely America, the grid. Other countries likely more weaponized weather, more climate threats, more, oh, we're overheating here in the summer in the UK. Well, good thing we put those smart meters inside your homes and on your homes and your smart thermometers and thermostats so we could turn the heat off and turn the air off and do all this stuff as we please, to make you live like a prisoner in your home and then blame it on the boogeyman known as the climate. And then people go, well, I mean, the weather is a little bit different. There are a lot of hurricanes, but they just refuse to realize that they have the ability to create hurricanes. They have this stuff patent. This goes back a long ways. I mean, I've shown you the clips from JFK to Lyndon B. Johnson talking about he who controls the weather will control the world. Well, they've mastered that. And guess who controls the weather? The global government. The shadow government controls it. And now they're going to work us by manipulating us and attacking us from all these different angles where we're never going to find out who it really is because it's them. So we're going to blame it on other countries. The cyber attack in this instance, they've already set the narrative in your brain without you realizing it, that it's Russia or China. Right? They just keep telling us this as if Russia or China has anything to gain from attacking United States civilians' water supply or power grid, which is just utter insanity. So the website adds that a tin opener should be in the package, as well as battery or wind-up torches and radios, wet wipes, and a first aid kit. Mr. Dowden says the measures are about sensible safeguards, not stockpiling, and the website is there to offer practical information for households to make those preparations for threats listed on the government's National Risk Register. This is the list that they put out for the civilians. Battery or wind-up torch, portable power bank, battery or wind-up radio to get updates during a power cut, and that's very important. I've talked about that before. It's very important. It's important that you have one so you could inform other people around you about what they're trying to do, because they're going to have a narrative in place that they want you to believe. And if they have control over the radio, which they do, it'll be one source of information flow. There won't be videos like this available. There won't be the people that you listen to on a daily basis to get your real information or use your discernment to get your real information. It'll be a one-track narrative. It'll be a one vacuum narrative. And they want to make sure civilians have a radio so that they could start spreading it. So even if your neighbor doesn't have one and you do, remember to tell them the real truth, because you're going to have a neighbor a few houses down that has a radio, and he's going to start feeding his neighbors the same propaganda that the government wants fed, which is, in America, likely it's Russia, it's China, it's Iran, and then everybody in your neighborhood's going to start saying the same thing. Oh, we got to do something about it. Instead of the civilians getting together going, you know what? I think our own government's up to something. They've been doing a lot of things that have been suspicious. They've been acting suspicious. I think that they did this. I think, in fact, that they've been sabotaging us, and by design, dividing all of us, like that old motto, divide and conquer, right? So have your wind-up radio for your propaganda, spare batteries, first aid kits, hand sanitizer and wet wipes, bottled water, non-perishable food, tinned meat, fruit, vegetables, and a tin opener, pet food, baby supplies. And of course, there's a lot more than that people are going to need. A lot more things, yes, you have to have a first aid kit. But, there's a lot of stuff that people need. And most specifically, if you're asking what I give my advice on this stuff when people ask, more than 3 days worth, okay? More than 3 days worth of food and water. And remember, your neighbors are going to become looking for your supplies, okay? They're not going to care that you were prepared and they weren't. They're going to think that you're some nut job regardless. They program people this with Leave the World Behind. The Kevin Bacon character, not sharing the things that he stored up because he saw the signs and the warnings, while the other people out there were doing what? Censoring people like us from even warning anyone because they were saying it's a detriment to their mental health to be prepared for some type of catastrophic event that would really just be sabotage in disguise. And that's what this is. So thousands to take part in an exercise, a pandemic exercise. The Deputy Prime Minister is speaking at the London Defense Conference this week, where he will say resilience begins at home, with a poll by the conference showing only 15% of people who have an emergency supply kit in their homes, and more than 40% do not have 3 days worth of non-perishable items. I've made that very clear. It's like 1%. Nobody even has the old stocked up food in their home. Now, you probably remember growing up, like your parents, your grandparents probably had a lot of soup and things like that stored up. Have you noticed how back then you could store up soup for like 10, 20 years at a time? Soup didn't go bad. Now they put the expiration date to be about 6 months to a year from when you purchase it. That's done by design as well, because they don't want you to have years worth of food stored up. They want you to look at the expiration date and go, oh, well, I got this food for the long term, but I better eat it now because the expiration date. And that's what 99% of people do. And they throw it out. They don't even realize that. They just stamp that on there so that you throw it out or go rebuy it and then go through the same thing. And eventually you go, well, I already threw out last year. I got it last year. I thought there was going to be some catastrophic event. I threw it out. I'm not going to buy it again. Nothing happened. I'm not going to worry about it. I'll worry about it when it comes, right? So this is really the government looking at you, smiling at you, telling you that it's coming. And they want to make sure when it comes that you don't blame them for it. So what's the government going to do? The government's going to say, we told you. We told you we warned you. We warned you over and over again. We told you that you needed to get 3 days worth of food. Now, when it turns out to be 3 months, they'll say, well, look, we still told you to stock up. Remember? We told you to get stuff there at least 3 days. We said at least is the fine print. So this is a way for them to not get blamed for what is happening. This is a way for them to say, we tried to help. We're from the government and we're here to help, right? The most frightening words in the English language. That's exactly what this is. They don't care. They're the ones behind it. And it makes them probably sleep better at night because in their minds, they're so sick. I've told people this before. The way you got to look at a lot of these Satanists is that they literally feel like, because we look at it and we go, okay, these people are doing these disgusting acts with children. They have children themselves. How are they doing this? Well, they do these things and then they believe that motto, your good deeds outweigh your bad deeds, is that when they do those things, they get rid of the guilt by doing things that they deem good. Even something as minimal as holding open a door for someone. I'm a good person, right? We're good people. We're telling you. Now, we're not telling you that we're doing it because we're doing this for your betterment. They believe in their mind the sabotage that they're committing is for our betterment, to benefit us for the long term. This is the old Freemasonic motto, right? Make good men better. They believe that by sabotaging the current system, that it's better for us in the long run. And if people die along the way, that, well, it's for a good cause. That seriously is how they view this stuff. People out there need to get that through their heads. So by telling you ahead of time, they really are telling themselves, hey, we tried to help. We gave them time to get prepared, even though at the same time, they've silenced people like me and you from talking about these issues. And what we're trying to do is get people prepared for long-term outages, etc., all caused by the government. And that's what we have to keep in mind, because you get hit with a tornado, you get hit with an F5, you get hit with a hurricane, you get hit with just a grid shutdown. All the things they're going to blame it on is all them. The solar flares is them. Look at the videos that I've done talking about the solar flare and HARP and how they could create this, how they can mimic this. It's a simulation that they're doing with the aurora lights, the aurora borealis, right? These are things that they're creating, all this other stuff I've mentioned with HARP. So my advice to people out there listening is to make sure you're stocked up. Make sure that you have everything that you need. I always say that to people, longer than 3 days worth, if you can. Okay, if you're somebody who lives paycheck to paycheck, and most of us do, it's very hard to get a long-term supply ready. So what people normally do is they just a little at a time, and that's the best way to do it. That's what I do, a little bit at a time. If I can get a few days worth per paycheck, then I get a few days worth per paycheck. And then over time, you end up building it up. But we're running out of time. So if you haven't started getting some things, get some things. Water-wise, make sure you have a supply. And if you don't have your own well pump, I tell people out there, if you have a well pump, okay, even if you have a generator, they could cut the natural gas. Get a pitch pump. Get one installed, a pitch pump, okay? If you're living on city water, find the nearest place where you can get drinkable water, which means a lake, a pond, and then of course know how to clean the water, right? I mean, there's people out there, I know it's laughable, but there's people out there that think you can drink the ocean water. I kid you not. We live among people that honestly, when this goes down, they're gonna think, hey, why don't we just go to the ocean to drink it, right? And that's what they've created. It's hard to blame these people for being so dumb because the government has done this by design. This is typical war on civilians 101, right? Dumb down the civilians, they gain more control over the civilians, they put more laws in place, and then of course they do what they're doing now, which is turning the civilians against people like us when they should be on our side. Nobody here's trying to gain power over civilians. We're trying to help civilians to stop this rogue group of psychopaths from doing what they're planning on doing. And what they're planning on doing is what they say here. It'll be a cyber attack, it'll be a tornado, we don't know. Just be ready for it. And when it happens, have your transistor radio, believe our narrative, don't blame us, and of course, stay the course, right? If your neighbor tells you that it's a conspiracy, make sure, because we programmed you ahead of time to attack them, go after them, say that they're nuts, that your radio tells you that this is the narrative and that's what we got to believe, that it's Russia, China, and Iran. And why should we believe that? Because we've programmed you already to believe that. That's what we've been doing for years with these cyber stories every single day, programming you to believe it's the boogeyman when it's your own government who's behind it. So keep an eye on this story in the UK. Doesn't surprise me one bit. What surprises me most is how dumbed down our society has become to actually believe that these people who are warning you aren't the ones responsible for it. Like they have some type of inside knowledge. If they had inside knowledge of a cyber attack, why don't they do something to stop it? I mean, we see what AI is capable of doing. We see, what is the government doing? What is the CIA doing? What is the NSA doing? Right? The NSA is supposed to be there to, for security. No, they're monitoring us. That's what they're doing. They're monitoring videos like this to make sure that they can come over and wipe them off the internet. So if they foresee a grid shutdown, they foresee a grid shutdown and they foresee a major cyber attack. Shouldn't they be doing everything since they work for us to prevent that from happening? Well, of course not, because they're the ones doing it. But they told you ahead of time, so don't blame them when they do it. I thank you for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you as always and your families.